Hello, everybody. It's Saturday, August the 15th, 2026. I'll probably put this show up tomorrow on the 16th. The heart of the summer. Everyone's away. I'm not quite sure why we're doing these shows. And according to the Wall Street Journal, this is the summer that America became a nation of Luddites. And it's not just the left that's turning against technology. It's also the right. There was an interesting piece in Transformer about a Jan 6 organizer who's getting conservatives to be riled up about AI. Everyone seems riled up about AI. And according to Keith Teare, the publisher of That Was the Week newsletter, it's not just the left and the right, it's even the AI community. His AI, that was an error, in his editorial this week, he asked why Watermark, and he suggests that Claude, in supporting or introducing watermarking in its product, is suggesting that my product is so bad for mankind that I plan to place an indelible fingerprint that I created it so everybody can know I was there. Keith, before we get to your views on watermarking, you're not a fan, you're not keen on watermarking, to borrow some of my language. What exactly is watermarking?
It's a word that describes lots of different techniques for identifying the source of content. For example, Google for a long time has used audio signals to watermark videos for copyright holders. In this case, it's Anthropic using text signals. In other words, it's adding stuff invisibly to your writing where it can say, yes, that came from us.
So it's indicating whether or not you or I or anyone else is using AI. And you ask in your editorial this week, why Watermark? Claude wants everybody to know it is there, which actually isn't surprising because Claude wants everybody to know it's everywhere. But what's wrong with watermarking? Why are you against it?
I'm against it for a lot of reasons. And I will say, to caveat, I don't know that I'm against it per se. I'm against it in this context.
Well, you say, and I'm quoting you in your editorial, you say, watermarking is nuts. So you couldn't say it more clearly than that. Unless you like nuts, Keith. Do you like nuts?
Just had them for breakfast. Almonds. Look, watermarking this week is nuts. Let's have this week, because it's really about Anthropic, for a reason I can't quite fathom, deciding that it will add something to the world if it watermarks things it's involved in. And in my brain, the only rationale I could come up with for that is they're almost like ashamed to be there. And they're also don't want their customers to use them without whoever is reading their customers to know they're there. So it's kind of tarnishing customers' use of their product by implying there's something wrong with using it. And so it's a quite remarkable decision that they've made to do that. And it comes this week with lots of whispers, which are not so quiet, that internally Anthropic is turning into a little bit of an ideologically motivated cult. And that word cult is being used.
Cult rather than cot. I'm thinking of a baby, a cult. Well, you hate Anthropic. Let's be clear, Keith. You've never barely said a good word about it. You're an OpenAI guy.
Oh, this week I think I've become a Grokbot guy.
Oh, yeah.
I'm for sale, actually.
You are?
I don't really owe any long-term affinity to any of them. And I've always said Anthropic's Claude is excellent, and it is. And I think OpenAI's Codex / ChatGPT is excellent. This week, you have to say Grokbot is excellent. It's as good as the others.
I mean, this is our wacky races. Every week things change. Although the FT today leads with a piece about OpenAI upheaval mounts as Sam Altman read his IPO push. I mean, I don't know how it can mount much more. Every day there seems to be a headline in the FT or the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal about upheaval at OpenAI. And the same is true of Anthropic in terms of their supposed $2 trillion IPO. Keith, let's get a little bit more into this idea of shame or guilt. Why, in your mind, is watermarking introducing the issue of shame or guilt to the use of AI? Why does it, in your view, and you suggested at least for this week, AI watermarking is nuts, you're not a big fan of it. Why does it make its users feel guilty?
Well, that paragraph you just showed explains it. A watermark starts from suspicion. In other words, there's a problem to solve. The watermark is solving some problem. Well, what is that problem that it's solving? I don't see a problem with using AI, so I definitely don't think there's a problem. But there is a zeitgeist. I don't know if it's the zeitgeist that use of AI somehow tarnishes the user. And it feels as if Anthropic is embracing that criticism and sees watermarking as a solution, which, if you think about it, if it has any effect at all, people on the margin will therefore not use it. Because
but I don't understand. I wonder whether there's a kind of guilt here with you. Why would people be embarrassed to use Anthropic? I'm not embarrassed to use it. You're not embarrassed to use it. We both acknowledge it. Why would watermarking it suggest guilt? Why wouldn't people wear it as a badge of pride?
I think we've got to ask Anthropic that question.
But no, but that it's your analysis. It's not Anthropic. Anthropic's just providing the watermarking. They're not suggesting that using it is a bad thing. That's your interpretation.
Well, why else would you need a watermark? What other? Try to give me 3 other reasons why would you?
Well, let's just say I'm curious. So, one of the other pieces you linked to this week is one by Alex Danko about, and its headline: "This essay is 10% AI generated." I'm always curious about whether or not people are using AI. It doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. And there are now products where you can run content through, text through, to determine. So I ran your editorial this week through Pangram, and it suggested that 86% of your editorial is produced by AI. I actually ran last week's editorial of mine. I couldn't do it this week because I haven't written it yet. And it said that mine is 100% human written. But that doesn't make me feel any better or worse. It shouldn't make you feel any better or worse. The fact that you're producing 86% of your content with AI doesn't make you feel inferior to me, does it, Keith?
No, but it's also wrong. I put Saul Klein's story this week through it, and it said it was 100% written by AI.
Well, we don't know. We'll have to get Klein. Maybe it is.
And I read his piece, and I could definitely see bits of it that I thought AI was involved in, but it wasn't 100%. And even if it was 100%, I could identify what I know about Saul's views completely penetrating that piece. So, you know.
But again, you're the one, Keith. It sounds to me, I'm not a psychologist
Andrew,
here, but you're the one.
You're not being fair. You're ignoring evidence. Last week we talked about publishers and a writer having his book cancelled and his agent resigning because he used AI.
Yeah, but we're not producing.
Don't pretend there isn't an issue. There is an issue. It's not me.
Yeah, but the issue then is a social one, that for some reason people feel that you shouldn't be using AI, but that's got nothing to do with Anthropic.
No, Anthropic's responding to that feeling.
Right. So that doesn't mean that it's suggesting that. But the interesting thing is why people are feeling.
You shouldn't respond to that feeling because it's wrong. If I'm leading Anthropic, I call bullshit on the publisher. I do what Elon would do. I don't do what Dario would do, which is kiss ass. And by the way, he kisses ass completely in a kind of a deceitful way where he's just trying to adjust to what people are asking. He reminds me of a politician, not the leader of a company.
But don't. I mean, in defense of Teare, probably doesn't need much of a defense from me. If indeed America is becoming a nation of Luddites, which the Wall Street Journal announced today, for better or worse, it's not saying that's a good or a bad thing. Both left and right are more and more suspicious of AI. If you were running Anthropic, don't you have to adjust to that? Isn't that just the reality of the market?
You should never adjust to the market. The market's wrong 9 times out of 10. You have to adjust to the long-term roadmap, the capabilities, and the good things it will bring to humanity if you succeed. You have to fund that, you have to earn revenue through that, and you have to either ignore or call out the people who are friction in the way of your roadmap. That's the right way for any leader of any startup to behave, because a startup that's disruptive inherently will have opponents, usually people that don't want change.
Well, I mean, Anthropic's going to, whichever position they take, they're going to have opponents. That's just the nature of things. And I wonder, you always use the H word, humanity or human. I never know quite what it means, but it seems as if this issue, Keith, of whether or not we use AI and the shame that it involves, I sense a little bit of shame on your part. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the wrong kind of therapist here. That's all too human, and that's a good thing, isn't it? I mean, none of us want to become machines. We know that the future is of increasingly smart machines. We're trying to carve out a space, a place where humans will remain human. Isn't shame one of those spaces? Because then it's not really rational, as you say. I mean, it's all too human.
I think shame should exist, and I would feel shame if I was replacing myself with AI and not caring what it said and publishing it anyway. You know, if it really was, and there are spam factories using AI that do exactly that. There are also fakers who do exactly that. And if I was doing that, I definitely would feel shame. I don't feel any shame at all recruiting an army of AI agents to help me accomplish my goals. None whatsoever, as long as I can stand by the output, which I therefore have to read it, change it, edit it, inspire it in the first case, then I don't feel any shame at all. But I think society is trying to make me feel shame. And as a normal human being who listens to everything, you certainly, and this must be true of you as well, Andrew, you must ask yourself, you know, always, have I crossed the line where those people are going to consider me a bad actor?
Well, I've always made a brand on being a bad actor, so I certainly don't want to be liked. But I passed the test. I got 100%. You only got 14%.
Was it right? By the way, was it right to give you 100%?
No, because I use Anthropic, but I use it as a draft, and then I rewrite the whole thing. So it gives me some structure.
Which is exactly what I do. Actually, there's a you're cutting yourself short there. You give it some content, so you don't.
Yeah, well, it has the interview. So
I create the interview,
a transcript. Then I say suggest suggest some notes, and then I mostly rewrite it, but I use sometimes its structure and some of its ideas.
So I do exactly the same. I give it content. In my case, it's the newsletter. In your case, it's the interview. So it starts with your work, my work. Then you know, I give it I'll ask it, you know, how many themes are there this week in the stories? And usually on a Friday, there's 50-ish stories. It will surface 4 or 5 themes that are buried inside the stories with evidence that the themes are there, using quotes and what have you. And I'll say, a bit like a news editorial meeting, I'll say, actually, I like theme 1, but it could be weaved in logically throughout the whole thing. There could be a line where all the themes come into play, but it's through the spectrum of theme 1. Go and do me a draft editorial that does that, and it will do it. And it'll be about 90% not how I think. Then I'll go back and forth a few times, tweak it. I get a draft at the end that's half decent, and then I rewrite it. That's what I do. So,
but again, this kind of conversation is an all too human conversation. We're speaking of how we each produce our unique content. I don't see why watermarking. I think watermarking, in a sense, is a very human addition to a product that, in some people's minds, certainly in America this summer, is threatening our humanity. So I don't have a problem with it at all. I think it's a good thing.
Why isn't Restream watermarking this, saying it came from Restream? Why doesn't Adobe Premiere?
Well, I wouldn't care if it did.
Yeah, but it's bullshit. There's no need for it. It's just a defensive reaction to a zeitgeist.
Well, you're not alone. I disagree with you, but lots of people are angry. One of your posts of the week is from someone called Arturo Villa. I wonder if he's related to Aston Villa. Anyway, he just cancelled his Claude Max subscription. So you're not alone. Did you cancel, Keith? Maybe if you felt strongly enough, you should just cancel. Do it. Go public with your outrage against Claude for watermarking.
Well, this probably gets to the nuance of what I'm saying. No, I haven't cancelled it. And honestly, I don't care that it's watermarked. I care that Anthropic thinks it should be watermarked, but I don't actually care that my stuff is watermarked.
Why do you care what Anthropic thinks?
Because I'm an analyst of tech, and I think it's a huge mistake. One of several is made, or they've made. And, I think they're in danger of destroying their company in the eyes of those who most use their product.
Yeah, I mean, my problem, actually, I'm a big fan of both Dario, and certainly compared with some of the other characters like Elon and Sam Altman. But my problem with Anthropic this week, I didn't tell you about this, is that I'm already on a $100 monthly subscription, which seems a lot to me. And my sense is that because they're trying to drive more and more revenue for the upcoming IPO, a supposedly $2 trillion IPO, they're narrowing down on use. So I used it once, and it's now telling me that I couldn't use it. So I wonder whether that's going on. And again, I'm sure that...
Did you run out of credits?
Yeah, I ran out of credits, and whether that's because I'm using the highest end product. But both Anthropic and OpenAI now, I mean, are focused exclusively on one thing, on generating the kind of revenue that will drive their IPO. I mean, the headline of the FT this week is on an OpenAI upheaval, but I'm sure there's as much upheaval in Anthropic. In fact, that was a great piece. I know you don't like trivia, Keith, so I kept it out of this week's conversation. That was a great piece. I think it was in the Wall Street Journal about Dario Amadei's wife, an ex-girlfriend of Eric Schmidt, which I was rather amused with.
That's not a good fact. If you know anything about Eric Schmidt.
Why?
Oh, we can't talk about it on
well, of course we can. You've introduced it. What you mean? Because he's a bit of a womanizer, poor old Eric.
Well, that's putting a value judgment on it. He seems to have a string of women who are attracted to him.
Well, I'm not sure they're attracted to him himself. I think they're probably attracted to his bank balance, but that's another question. The IPOs, though.
Just a minute, Andrew. I wanted to pick up on your previous question. So the $200 a month spot seems to be becoming normal. Grok this week launched Grokbot, which is an OpenClaw replacement. I'd say a far better version of OpenClaw. So that's a big deal. And they priced it out of the box at $200 a month. In other words, you have to subscribe to Grok Premium to be able to use it. Probably that'll change over time. And I don't know if it's only the IPO driving that. I think in a week where the NVIDIA committed to $500 billion worth of investment, the ROI on that investment, its time has come. And so revenue becomes important, not just for narrow, selfish IPO reasons, but more broadly, unless these companies can be sustained, they won't build the future we all hope they will. So
well, some of them, I mean, most of us seem not for them not to want to build the future. So I think some people in America would be thrilled if these IPOs fizzle or don't even happen. So you may be wrong on that. I mean, it depends how you come to this. And of course, Grok has less pressure because it's already gone public.
Yeah, SpaceX is already public, but I still think, knowing founders, and Elon is an extreme version of a founder. When the race is still on, they'll do everything to win. And the fact that he,
but you're saying that Dario isn't doing that. You're saying that Dario is purposely or unwittingly shooting himself in the foot with this Watermark thing.
I'm convinced he thinks he's doing everything to win. I don't think he realizes that he's damaging his chances over and over again.
Well, we certainly will see. I mean, I think the rest of this year and the next 5 months are going to be dominated by these IPOs. One of the arguments you make in why Watermark or why watermarking is nuts, why you're against it, is you think it will create more inequality in the future. What's the connection between watermarking and the failure for AI to be accessible for everybody?
Well, look, equality when it comes to AI delivering intelligence is really all about price and reach. How cheap is it? And you would hope the answer is it's free for some use cases. How cheap is it, and how widespread is it? And anything that produces friction by reinforcing the Luddite lobby in their attempts to slow it down, get it under government regulatory control.
Well, that's got nothing to do with watermarking.
Or in an extreme way, even banning it, like data center bans. Watermarking is part of that narrative, because watermarking is accepting there is a problem when there is not a problem.
It is not, though. I think, again, I sense some sort of guilt. Why?
Andrew, what is it doing if it isn't doing that? Because
people are curious. As I said, I mean, I ran it through.
You're curious, but is that why he's doing it, to serve your curiosity?
I have no idea why he's doing it. I can't look into Dario Amadei's mind. But I don't
have a wild guess. Is he thinking Andrew's curious, so I'm going to put this in?
No, he's not. He's just, I think that people, okay, I'm curious, and I think many people are curious. So when there's more and more curious. There's more. You asked me. There's more and more content online. People are curious. Did Keith actually write this, or was it written by AI?
No, curious is a cheating word. They're malevolently curious. They want to punish people who use it.
Why? Why is it punishing them? Because you've got this sense of guilt. It's bad to use AI.
The guy last week who lost his agent and his publishing contract. There's many other examples, by the way.
But that's an extreme. Hold on, that's an extreme case, because the publishing industry doesn't want AI.
Responding to. They're not responding to curiosity. They're responding to that case, and they're feeding it. They're feeding that case.
Yeah, I sense a sense of guilt on your part, or a sense that somehow.
You keep saying that, and do I look guilty? I'm not guilty.
You do look a bit guilty. I don't usually. I mean, is this a little bit of the religious coming out of Keith Teare, the sense of shame, which I think is a good thing, because it shows you're human, and that's what we've got to define in our AI. It's not a bad thing, even what you're saying.
If you ask me, is there anything I've written that I feel ashamed by? I'm sure I could go and find some things, but it isn't the use of AI that I feel ashamed of. Maybe some of the graphics that illustrate the newsletter.
What about the videos?
maybe some of those.
You're not to blame for that. We can blame. What video algorithm do you use?
I use CDance 2.5 on a service called Higgsfield.
Yeah, I think you should feel guilt on that. Do you have a priest, Keith? Do you confess every week? Or is this the equivalent of your confession?
I am firmly in the atheist camp, which I do accept is also a faith. So,
do you believe in sin, though? I mean, you seem to be suggesting that Dario Amadei is a bit of a sinner.
I don't believe in sin, but I do believe in good and bad. Sin is the religious version of good and bad, like there's somebody judging you other than yourself.
Is Eric Schmidt a sinner for all his sexual adventures?
No one's a sinner because there is no God and there is no heaven and there is no hell. But he is a bad actor on occasion.
Should we have Eric Schmidt watermarked? I mean, he has a terrible reputation for his womanizing. I mean, isn't that what media does in a kind of weird way? It watermarks individuals. So Schmidt is, for better or worse, watermarked as a, if not a sexual predator, certainly a sexual adventurer, and that's just the nature of things.
I think there's a media subplot here, which is, if you weren't going to blame Anthropic, the next place you should go is the media. And Anthropic is a reactor, not an instigator. The instigator is the media, and we can find in the media all kinds of stories we do every week, some of which are Luddite themselves, others of which are calling out Luddites. So everything is there in the media. But I think the dominant impact on the AI companies from the media is one calling for a reaction. And you almost never should take the bait with the media.
Well, according to Keith, Dario Amadei has taken the bait. I'm not convinced. What about some other pieces this week? Anti-tech thought is more and more of a central subject in our summer of the Luddites. Noah Smith says that there's a poverty of anti-tech thought. You're a big fan of Noah Smith. He always seems to come up. Maybe it's Anthropic's bias in this, but or one of your other algorithms. But why is anti-tech thought impoverished, at least according to Smith?
So he reflects on the narrative around big tech having descended into the caricature of tech bros and billionaires. And he's calling out the insubstantial nature of that discussion and pointing out that there's a massive difference between coercion and persuasion, and that what tech is good at is persuasion. That's why large numbers of people use it, and the most valuable companies on earth are tech companies. And he suggests that what people should focus on isn't the success of big tech in building things that people want to use and persuading them to use it, but focus on coercion. And coercion falls on the other side. It's when there is an attempt, especially by the media, to stop things through government diktat. That's a bigger problem than tech bros and billionaires. So it's quite a substantial piece, and I'm summarizing it. There's lots in the piece. When he gives the example of the iPhone, he says, when Steve Jobs launched the iPhone, it was so good that the argument was over on day one about whether it was good or bad. There was
I mean, I disagree on the iPhone. I mean, it was so good in a sense, but had society, to use the term, known about the impact of the iPhone on the world, I think there would have been more discussion, but that's another question.
But no, Smith, honestly, I think he's one of the better real-time thinkers. We talked last week about reading books. I think his reading habits are a bit like mine.
He doesn't read?
No, I read probably 20 hours a week, but it's not books. It's things like his essays. And those, you have to reflect, digest, and respond in substance quite quickly. And he does that 2 or 3 times a week. He's very good.
Yeah, one of the pieces that you didn't actually put in the newsletter that I've added was an excellent review of Darren Acemoglu's new book on saving liberal democracy by Martin Wolf, old friend of mine, the FT's economics correspondent, very distinguished economist. He gives Acemoglu's book a really good read, a critical read, and suggests that most worryingly, he thinks that, and I'm quoting him here, that the ship of Acemoglu's version of liberal democracy has sailed, that something has changed dramatically. I'm not sure if you saw the Wolf review, Do you think Wolf might have a point here? He says that and I'm quoting him here, in the era of deindustrialization and AI, we seem to be reaching the end of of an era. Is it really possible to restore the politics of a technological and economic age that is itself vanishing? I think it's an important point.
Yeah, the most interesting part of that review, I thought, was...
Oh, you already read it. It was good, wasn't it?
Yeah. I just didn't get it in the newsletter because I only just saw it. But the most interesting part, I think, is the part that tries to explain the relationship between technology, society, and politics, making the point that liberal democracy without industrial capitalism would have been unthinkable because feudal overlords would have survived. And the political regimes that go along with feudalism, monarchies or military dictatorships, would have survived. And the era we're now in is kind of interesting because as industrialization becomes automated and dispersed, the working class life experience changes from getting up at 5, walking or bicycling to work and working physically, at least 8 hours a day, eating, drinking, sleeping, and rinse, repeat. That life experience is eroding. And especially in America, the sense of the possibility of work that is less demanding and possibly less hours changes the affinity between people and society in a positive way.
Well, I strongly disagree with that. I think it may be in theory and maybe in the future, but at the moment, I just came back from Indianapolis. I spent this week in the Midwest. It's, at least from anecdotally walking around, deindustrializing places like Indianapolis, the reverse is true. I mean, in the UK, 20% of people now, literally, and this is an official number, 20% of people are on disability. They're not only are they not working, they're completely out of the labor market. So there's no evidence that what Wolf, for better or worse, what Wolf calls deindustrialization is benefiting the ex-working class. I know you don't like the term, whatever you want to call them now.
Yeah, no, I mean, we said last week in response to a question from you, I made the point that I think in any meaningful sense, there isn't a working class anymore, as in a class that sees itself as a class. There may still be, from a sociological point of view, people who are working class demographically, but they don't think of themselves that way. And that's a huge difference because it means the Labour Party in England, for example, or the UK, can't call on the working class as their natural voters because the working class don't think of themselves as working class. And that's been true for a while. That is a big change. What I'm talking about, Andrew, though, what you're doing, and it's an okay way to do things, but you're taking a snapshot, if you will, of the way the world is. And I think you're right. I think you have an accurate...
Say it again. Say it again.
You're right. And you have an accurate snapshot of Indianapolis, for example. And deindustrialization has led to despair, which has been part of the reason for Trump's successes. And I do think, however, that if instead of a snapshot, you take a movie and it has a future and a past, and you put that snapshot in the context of that, we are rapidly moving towards a more affluent society.
I think this is where, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole again. I think this is where you and I strongly disagree, but that's maybe the subject of another show or previous shows.
But by the way, it does relate to your question about democracy, because I think my framing, I have come to believe that the point of history is the individual freedom from necessity. So I think of the point of history is individual self-realization, whereas the left, it's breaking up, and maybe this will change, but the left has and I used to be one of those, thought of the point of history as collective.
Yeah, I mean, maybe coming back to guilt, maybe you're manifesting the guilt of an ex-leftist communist Thatcherite.
No, I think it's putting the individual in its right place, because what's the point of any progress unless individuals are better?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And I think you and I would probably share that. We live with similar types, living similar kinds of lives. But the reality, Keith, is that whilst this opportunity may exist for people like you and I and others, the vast majority of people, for better or worse, are not seizing it. And I don't see any evidence that they'll seize it in this brave new world of AI. Well, and that's where you and I think differ. I think you're more positive and optimistic. I just don't see it.
Well, actually, I think we agree on the snapshot. So that's where we agree. The rest is opinion, obviously. So it's okay to disagree when opinion comes into it. But in my case, I think of it as an activist, not as a historian. I think of the future as what's missing that could now be put into place. And I want to get practical then. So, for example, rethinking education is definitely missing. But now the tools you have to rethink education are the best you've ever had. You could really do something fantastic in education. Same in health.
I don't disagree, but the question is, you could, whether you will or not. We'll come back to that.
Somebody will, though, because they can.
Well, I'm not. We could have had this conversation 25 years ago about democratizing information, and you would have said somebody can, and I would say maybe they can't, and we are where we are. Coming back to today, the interview of the week is with the Harvard and Princeton educated Renee Jones. She has a new book out. I'm sure you would strongly disagree. In fact, I think I mostly disagree with what she said. Untamed Unicorns, Why Startup Finance is Broken and How to Fix It. She argues in this book, she teaches at Boston College.
I listened to it as well, by the way. I thought it was a good interview.
Yeah. What do you make of the argument that the problem with the startup economy, why startup finance is broken, at least according to Jones, is because OpenAI or Anthropic, these $2 trillion companies, have been allowed through different kinds of regulation or absence of regulation to become too large as private companies. They're not transparent enough. Does she have a point, Keith? You're in it. This is one of your areas of expertise, startup finance.
Well, look, she does miss a big part of it. I mean, she's looking at the end result, and I don't think she's not especially wrong in her description of the end result.
And she's a former SEC official, so she sees the inside of DC too.
Yeah, but I think she doesn't understand the why, and the why has nothing to do with money or the companies. The why is to do with science and discovery and innovation that has led to the possibility of software companies in particular getting very big very fast. And by fast, often as quickly as 12 months from starting to becoming.
Yeah, I mean, look at what's happened with Anthropic in the last 12 months. It's absolutely astonishing.
So what is it that causes things to get big fast? The biggest reason is the global distribution of their software overnight. So suddenly anyone with an Android phone or a smartphone, which is now 4 or 5 billion people, literally overnight, if you deliver something they want, can be using it. And so even if you're only monetizing a small percent of those people, you as a company can come very big, very fast. And when that happens, the markets value you at a multiple of your revenue. 20 times your revenue, 50 times, sometimes even 200 times your revenue, which is a normal rational behavior for markets when they see growth. So she's missing the fact that if she wanted to stop this, she'd have to de-globalize the world, prevent software from being distributable quickly everywhere, prevent the freemium model, the subscription model. There is nothing about this underlying truths that she would be capable of stopping.
Right, and for people who want to listen to my own inner Keith Teare, they should listen to the interview. I was quite critical, I thought, of her. I mean, she seems to think that even Uber and and Airbnb are blights in the world, and that if we could go back and undo them, it would benefit the world. So I don't disagree with you on her. I mean, I think she reflects our summer, that the summer that America became a nation of Luddites. But it's an interesting book and an interesting argument.
The other insight, Andrew, there is it does tell you a bit about the regime she came out of and what the assumptions are inside that. The Lena Khan assumptions as well would go.
Your favorite, yeah. I think she's a nicer, smarter version of Lena Khan.
But if we're talking to the Democrats who are listening,
I don't think we have any. Do we have any Republican listeners? You may have Republican listeners. I probably don't have any.
Well, so the Democrats who are listening, do you really want this point of view to define what you stand for? In this world where so much good could happen, what is your argument for embracing it, channeling it, and producing a better world? It seems as if that entire ecosystem is missing that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And I'm more and more convinced that these IPOs at the end of the year, or whenever they're going to happen, represent a kind of climax to this particular narrative. There was an interesting piece in the New York Times with the headline, "Tech Giants' Profits Reveal Potential Vulnerability in the Stock Market, the Circular Nature of This Economy, which may undermine the Anthropic or the OpenAI IPOs, and may indeed also challenge the exuberance of the current market." You didn't think they made a good point, though, Keith. You ran your grok bot against it. Why is this piece wrong in your view?
Yeah, actually, I was testing Grokbot all day yesterday. So when you sent me this article, I put it to the test. Obviously, I said to Grokbot, the circular argument seems flawed. If a company does two things, that doesn't make it circular.
So you convinced it before it was thinking. It knew what you wanted to hear.
Yeah, well, and the point about circularity is often a word used to describe a closed system in which, you know, money A goes to money B, and money B becomes money C going back and becomes money D, and it's the same internal system. AI isn't like that. There are hundreds of billions of dollars of external money flowing into it through revenue. And so the deals that the infrastructure providers are doing with each other to support the building out, that is the precondition for AI being deliverable for free to everyone in the world. Without that investment, it's a bit like if you didn't build the Channel Tunnel between London and Paris, you wouldn't be able to get on a train and go there. If you want AI to be in the hands of an African school child, you have to do this investment.
I knew you were going to throw in an African school child. Are we all supposed to start crying now?
No, because I think the African school child's future is pretty decent now. But it does. The
mention of an African school child froze, Keith. Go on.
But it does require investment, and I would argue that the large amounts of money being invested in AI may well be way too small.
Okay, but the point of the piece, right? But the point of the piece is that the high price of Alphabet and Amazon is being driven by their investments in Anthropic and particularly in Anthropic. So I don't know if the Grokbot critique was actually referring to the piece. It was just confirming what you already thought and telling you what you wanted to hear.
Well, yes. Look, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and others have been investing in AI companies for probably 5 years now, maybe even longer. And the stock they own goes up, not because they invested. That doesn't cause the stock to go up. It's because the investments go up. And the investments go up because the revenue goes up for the companies they invested in, and the total addressable market goes up. And every time these investments get made in infrastructure, it immediately correlates to future revenue. because the demand for AI vastly exceeds the supply. So that's going to be true until the whole world is plastered with AI. So the investments are completely logical. The stock
But that's
market,
not the point. It's not a question.
the
No one's
valuations
saying
are
it's illogical. The article simply argued that one of the reasons for the exuberance, the main reason for the exuberance of Wall Street, is the the stock market embrace of companies like big tech companies like Amazon and Alphabet. They're unique, and that their money is coming from
illiquid shares.
From the unicorns, from Renee Jones's unicorns, the untamed unicorns.
Yeah, well, partly yes, but it isn't money. Remember this, Andrew. There's no money. There is value on the balance sheet associated with a share, but the share is not liquid, or not very liquid. If they tried to sell them all, it would tank the market, and so it's provisional value, but it isn't realized value. Realized value comes when this whole cycle is completed and money is flowing back through the entire ecosystem. So it's not wrong of the market to value it because it's real. But I guarantee they're going to value the growth of Amazon and Alphabet's revenue at a higher multiple than they'll value the growth of those stocks.
Well, my wife has left Google now. She's gone over to Zillow to run their legal and regulatory lobbying. So I would invest in Zillow, not in Alphabet anymore. I am, though, convinced, Keith, that this narrative, this first stage, or whatever you want to call it, will reach its climax, for better or worse, with these IPOs later in the year, the dual IPOs of Anthropic and OpenAI. Don't you think that's true? For better or worse, I mean, it's just the narrative. It's the flow of history.
Look, they can only screw it up. SpaceX went back above its IPO price this week. Last week, everyone was talking doom and gloom about it because Grokbot is very, very good. I do think if they don't screw it up, they will both list. They'll get a lot of money from the listing. That will grow infrastructure, which will satisfy some of the demand. Revenues will go up, and the curve will be up and down, but up and down on an upward curve. I don't give investment advice, but I will personally buy both.
Well, I hope you're going to do better this week, Keith, on your Watermark test. You're going to get below 86% of AI.
Those tools are so bad that I don't care what they say, to be honest. The fact that you got 100% when you use AI pretty much the same way I do.
Well, I'm a clever cheater. You're a less clever cheater, shall we say?
But there's no shame in that.
Well, on that note, shame and all too human feeling, we will end. We'll see you next week, Keith. There'll be no shame to our next week's show either. Thank you so much.
Ciao.